Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to IBMF's LetNet webinars. My name is Elvis Abdic, and today we have a great session for you guys. We have partnered up with Hire Heroes USA to bring you a panel discussion with employers here today on about mastering interview and securing the job. So today on our panel, we're gonna have employers from Stryker, Grainger, Tango Alpha 3, Novelist, and Instantly. So, and moderating our session today will be Martin Ramirez from Hire Heroes USA. He's an employer engagement specialist. But before I pass it over to Martin to introduce himself and our panelists, I'm just going to remind you that this session is being recorded. And if you have registered for this session, you will receive a recorded link to the session along with the survey. So please let us know how you did and what other future webinar topics you would like to see. During this session, if you do have questions, please type in the chat box or raise your hand and we'll get to you. We will have some time for Q&A later today. That being said, Martin, welcome.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Elvis. Hello, everyone. I'm Martin. I've been at Hire Heroes for going on 6 years now. I spent the first 5 years working with clients, providing them resume writing and our career counseling services. I've actually transitioned since then to work with our employer partners. Leslie yesterday is actually one of the people I work with, so it's been a great relationship working with them. With that, without further ado, I'd like to introduce all of our employers. We have Jacqueline from Stryker. Jacqueline.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, everybody. My name is Jacqueline Jarl. I go by JJ, and I've been with Stryker for 7.5 years, currently leading Stryker's military recruiting program. And before Stryker, I was in the Army as an intelligence officer for 5.5 years. And I am very excited to be here to share the knowledge that I have learned, both as somebody who transitioned out of the military and somebody who's been on the employer side interviewing military talent as well. So excited to share my knowledge with everyone.
All right, thank you, JJ. Leslie from Grainger.
Thanks, Martin. Leslie Easterday. I am a senior talent acquisition consultant with Grainger. As Martin has said, we regularly partner with Hire Heroes through many career opportunities that Grainger has throughout our entire organization. I am one of the members that supports the military and veteran recruiting in our task force through those efforts. My primary responsibilities are supporting the exempt level recruiting or salaried recruiting for the global supply chain and customer experience organization. So that would be anything from our distribution centers, our stores, customer service centers, or even just supply chain logistic roles that Grainger has throughout the country. But in addition, if you're not familiar, we are more than just a logistics distribution organization. So being able to have roles that focus and center around data engineering, data science, product management, finance, really all of those type of roles have a really strong presence through Grainger. So really excited to be here and support really the veterans and military members and their families as they look and continue their career search really in the civilian sector. So thank you for inviting me.
All right, thank you, Leslie. Now we have Drew from Tango Alpha.
Yeah, so Drew McDonald with Tango Alpha 3. I really appreciate the opportunity to be part of this forum. I've been in the staffing and recruiting industry for over 20 years. I've hired hundreds of veterans, and then started Tango Alpha 3 with a partner. My business partner is a service disabled veteran, and we specialize. We support both government programs, some global government programs that we hire a lot of veterans for. And then we also, obviously, some large companies here, but some companies don't have the infrastructure to build their own veteran recruiting programs or veteran programs. And so we do those for kind of on a fractional basis with some smaller organizations. And no, it's been I'm myself a civilian, but it's been a real pleasure of mine to work with so many veterans in over the years and help them translate their skills over to their new career from leveraging their military experience. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Drew. That's awesome. Now, Rich from Nobliss.
Now, can you hear me? Okay. Sorry, you know, when you start doing these virtual things, every platform's a little different, but without further ado, I'm Rich. I'm the recruiting staffing manager at Nobliss. I've been here 3 years now. I'm actually retired Air Force, did 24 years, been out, believe it or not, for 10. Been working in the government contracting space for the majority of that time. I am also the military outreach recruiter, which obviously makes sense sometimes because it is a lot. And I love being part of these programs where you can give back to the veterans and you know, sometimes I think, man, I wish I had this type of forum or someone could have showed me what it was like on the other side of the fence or other side of the wall to help prepare myself to get a job or make myself more marketable. So look forward to being a part of the conversation. Real quick on Nobliss, it's been around 25 years. It's a nonprofit government contractor, and most of the time that makes people like scratch their head. Is that even one of those things, right? Can you be a government nonprofit? And you definitely can. We have locations from Virginia to San Diego. We're a military-friendly company. We're right around 30% of our population or our employees are veterans. We have employee readiness groups. We also participate in the Skill Bridge program where people during their separation, they can basically almost, I call it like an internship, but they can be a part of that as well at Nobliss. So I look forward to the conversation and the questions and hopefully helping folks that might need answers.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Rich. And last but certainly not least is Erica from Instant Teams. Hi, Erica.
Hi, thank you guys so much for having me. My name is Erica Kreider. I'm a recruitment specialist at Instant Teams. I have centered my whole life pretty much around military. My dad is an Air Force veteran of 25 years. I married an active duty Air Force recruiter. So it's pretty fun to be able to compare the two worlds. I've been working remotely here for about 3 years. Before that, I was with the VA. I've done anything from operations to administration and now recruiting. So I got into Instant Teams because they're a platform that I truly believe in. They outreach to veterans and military spouses. In fact, the company was founded by 2 active duty Army spouses who tried to just pave the future in remote work for military affiliated communities. So we are unique in that we're 100% remote. We're all over the world. So that's been a great thing to be a part of. And with COVID, a lot of companies have transitioned into remote work. And we like to say that we are where remote works. So it's been great. We have a lot of positions under 2 umbrellas, mostly operations and customer support. We're getting new customers every day, though, new positions every day. So they're ranging from anything from those customer focused roles to anything to web development, ticketing, content management, executive assistant. So we're a smorgasbord of opportunities. So excited to talk more about that.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Erica. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today. I'm looking forward to hearing your insights. So without further ado, I'd like to actually kick off some of these questions. So I'll just ask the panel, and first person to come up, please feel free to always chime in if you have something you want to add or your own perspective, because these are some awesome questions. So first one, talking about mastering the interview, what are the traits of a successful candidate? What does a successful candidate look like in the eyes of the employer?
Martin, are you just wanting us just to chime in?
Yes, please. Go right ahead.
Okay, sure. I can, kick us off if no one minds. So I think, the standard kind of remains the same, right? Is candidates should certainly do their research on the company. I think you still dress appropriately and properly for an interview based on the level of position you are applying for. Don't be afraid to ask what you should wear to an interview. And certainly, at the basic level, also be prepared to ask questions. And when I think about what Grainger looks for in candidates, we want our candidates to do research on the company and be able to really answer the question, why Grainger or why this position. But honestly, too, it's, extra credit to those candidates that can think beyond, hey, I heard you were a great company or you have great benefits, but really a thoughtful response that leads into, how does this position or this company fit into kind of your career and your life goals? How can you leverage your experience in or out of the military and transition that to a successful position or career with Grainger? And how can we help you develop into kind of meeting those goals? The other thing I would say is, as I mentioned, definitely want to prepare questions for the interviewers. I think candidates sometimes forget that you are interviewing the company just as much, if not more, than the company is interviewing you. And especially in this market, and more so in this market where candidates really have a choice. And you really want to make sure that you are finding the best fit, both now in what you're looking for, but also in the future for both you and your family, I think is really key. And then thirdly, I would just say, candidates that can really tell their story in a very clear and concise manner. And I kind of put an asterisk by that because everyone gets nervous when interviewing. And so no one on this side of the table expects anyone to be perfect. But I think you still need to be able to articulate who you are in your experiences. Specific example, Grainger does use behavioral interviewing. So we are looking for kind of those STAR responses, the situation, the task, the action, the results. And so being able to tell the interviewer, what the situation was, what your action you took, or what the result was, or the impact you made in that situation, I think is really key. And then just finally, I would say, do not get sidetracked with the question of tell me about yourself or tell me about your background. That type of question can lead you to a 15-minute discussion or 20-minute discussion when really it's only meant to just highlight a 2 to 3 minute type of high level, focusing on experiences that might be relevant. So I think those are like my 4 takeaways of really what, when you think about a successful candidate during the interview process, what you should probably kind of keep in mind or highlight.
I think, Leslie, I should probably take notes from everything you just said, because I think you really hit everything. And I would just add, in this virtual world that we live in now, that a lot of interviews now can be done just like we're doing this virtual aspect. So, I would just add, make sure you have a professional background, make sure you're in a place where you're not going to be distracted by different things that might be going around. Having a strong Wi-Fi signal, whatever it might be, just so that your face doesn't freeze up while you're talking. But I think you definitely hit the main points I would have touched on. And that when you talked about the SAR, right, the situation, action, results, I would recommend having 2 to 3 of those, and especially tailored to the job, because really when you're on this side of the table, if you will, if you're the hiring manager or even the recruiter, the question is, do they have the skills and can they do the job? And am I going to be able to be confident when I say, JJ, you're my next hire, or whoever it is? Do I feel confident that I got the best person that I know I'm going to be able to do something else and not worry about that position and know they're going to be able to hit the ground running or close to that? So anyway, that's all I would add.
Yeah, I'll jump on and add something in specifically to, so first of all, I'll address what Rick said, right? So if after the interview, there is any doubt in the hiring manager's mind, or sometimes like Stryker does a panel interview. So you're interviewing with 4 to 5 different people individually, right? But they all come together and talk about whether or not you are the best candidate for this role. If there's any doubt in their minds that you could be, or maybe not to be the best person for this role, most likely they're not going to move forward, right? So you have to be like, you have to sell it, okay, at the end, right? You have to close the sale. And then specifically from a military perspective, and this is obviously something that I went through myself in the transition, is preparation is key. Okay, Leslie mentioned that they do behavioral interviewing, right? Stryker is more of behavioral interviewing as well, but you do have other companies that are like a case interview, right? And things like that. So you have to do the preparation and find out what type of interviewing that company does. And the best way to do that is to network within that company, right? Go on LinkedIn and find veterans who currently work for that company and just say, hey, I have an interview. Do you have 15 to 30 minutes where we can get on a call so I can ask and prepare for the interview? And the other part of preparation is don't use military jargon. Okay, so practice your answers without using military jargon. And the recommendation that I have for practicing that is find a friend, a family member, a nephew, a niece, whoever who has not been in the military before and is not a military spouse, because spouses speak the lingo. Okay. And then practice your answers. Have them ask you different questions and practice your answers to them. Have them point out every single word that they did not understand. Okay, that is how you figure out if you're talking military lingo or not, because a lot of times to us, it might not be a military lingo, but it is to them and they don't understand what that is. Okay, so that's a good way. Again, it's about preparation, right? Preparation sets you up for success. And then the last thing that I wanted to add on is as far as questions go. So yes, you should bring questions to the interview, right? For sure, because you should be doing research about the company and hopefully, that will bring up some questions. You should be doing research about the role and networking within the company, which all should bring up questions. But you should also be asking questions that arise from the interview itself. Okay, that shows the interviewer that number one, you were paying attention and that you were listening to them. And number two, that you're actually interested in that specific role. Okay, and not just any role within the company. Or, I've had this a lot interviewing candidates. They literally just ask me random questions that they Googled. Right. And you can tell because the wording of the question is written in a way where it's like very professionally written. So that they probably found it online somewhere. Okay, so don't make that mistake. You should always ask questions that arise from the interview.
That's awesome. Thank you, JJ. Erica, if you had anything to add, or Drew.
Yeah, I would love to actually add on what Jacqueline was saying, and actually all of them, Leslie and Rich. So with the military jargon, it's true, it's something that's completely something you should avoid. And talking with my husband, trying to get his perspective coming from a military recruiter to a civilian recruiter, trying to recruit the military spouses and veterans. I found that if he was to look for a recruiting position in the HR field or in the recruiting field as a civilian, it could look a little bit different for him, because I asked him, do you know what an ATS system is? And he's a seasoned recruiter, 7 years, and he had no idea what an ATS system was. So I had to tell him, you know what an ATS system is. It's just not something that you are used to calling it. So comparing the civilian terms to military terms in the civilian world is something that I think is really important in the military. because you have probably done it. You've probably are an expert in it, but it could be something called completely different. So I think that that is really important to look at. Also regarding the answers to questions in interviews. If I've also found that I have had questions answered in my interviews. What I find helpful is that you repeat it. Say, I did originally have this question, but you answered it with this. Just again, like what Jacqueline said, showing them that you understand, you know, and that you have listened to what they had to say. And I mean, today, more than ever, I feel employers need employees just as much as employees, you know, need the job. So you are interviewing, you should ask all of the questions that you can. You need to sell yourself, and the company will sell themselves as well. And from there, all the different questions, it's better to find a fit that way. Culture wise, that's important too, to look at the company culture. Do some research on that. Again, LinkedIn is a good place to go for that. Look at their recent posts and kind of just play off of their culture, looking at what they've most recently posted, how they say it, you know, just how they speak in their posts. So you can find out a lot about the company and, you know, the people working there just by looking at their social media.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. Yeah, so I mean, I just echo everybody's comments here. The only, I would really emphasize, and it has been emphasized, the translation layer is where so many jobs are won and lost. And so know the company's mission, just like you know your you know in the military have a mission. Know the company's mission and use their language as best you can to explain how you're going to add value to them.
So a pretty solid question came up, and I really wanted to address because we were already on the subject of it. And this one came from Bill Lockhart. Would it be a wise idea to take notes during an interview, or is that a distraction? And since we're on the subject right now, I figured let's go ahead and address this from the panel.
Yeah, I typed it in the notes there, or in the chat there, that it definitely is okay to take notes. You should not be looking down at your notepad the entire time, right? The eye contact is a very important thing during interviews. And then, you know, as a courtesy, I would always ask the interviewer, like, hey, do you mind if I take notes, right? In the very beginning, when you first sit down, and if, you know, you can take out your notepad or not, but just ask the question, hey, do you mind if I take notes? But yeah, I would say it is okay to take notes, especially since, you know, obviously if you're interviewing with like 4 or 5 different people in one day, it is hard to remember, right, who you spoke with and who talked about what and who told you what. So that is okay, but as a courtesy, just make sure you ask them in the beginning.
Awesome, thank you, JJ. All right, so next question. What suggestions, feedback, or recommendations would you have for veterans or military families about preparing for each different types of interviews, whether it be phone screening or on-site or to ace the interview? Did I repeat that question again?
I mean, I can go if I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to like dominate the conversation here, but I'll just say I'll go through phone interviews and then somebody else can pick up all the other ones. So usually with your very first interview with the recruiter, it generally is going to be a phone interview. So just they're going to call you, no video, right, or anything like that. And I think a lot of times that does get a lot of people because it is so awkward to talk into a phone, right? Without, and at least the video, you have like a face that you're looking at and things like that. But it's so awkward to talk into a phone, especially for veterans, where you have to like, pretty much you have to like pat yourself on the back, right? That's what interviews are all about, right? You have to talk about your achievements. You have to pretty much try to sell yourself as like the best thing since sliced bread. And that's very uncomfortable for a lot of veterans, right? And like myself included. But that is what you need to do. So again, preparation, right? During interviews, you know they're probably going to ask you about your achievements, something around leadership, something around team building, depending on the role. If you're interviewing for a manager role, they're going to ask you about your prior management experience, development, engagement, right? All of that. So I would say have answers prepared. Don't write them out so you're not reading them, but have answers prepared, almost like you're giving a presentation where you have bullet points to remind you of what you need to say. You definitely rehearse it, but don't memorize it. Okay, don't make it sound like you're just reading from a script or that you memorize it and that's just kind of the canned answer that you're giving them. I would also recommend that you dress the way that you would for an on-site interview. Okay. Believe it or not, the type of dress that you are in influences the way that your mind thinks about the event subconsciously. Okay. So it brings forward a different attitude. Also, standing up. So a lot of people, when they're on the phone, they're either sitting down or something like that. I would recommend standing up. This is for phone and virtual. And because standing up, and this is, I'm not making this up. This is like, you can take the LinkedIn class on body language and, all of that, all of these things. Standing up, again, same thing. It's just kind of like a trick to let your mind know, like, okay, this is the event. It's formal. It's important, versus if you're sitting like on your couch or even at a desk. I would just recommend you to do that. Have bullet points of the things that you're going to say, and stand up anytime you can, and then dress in a professional manner, so that your mind, is subconsciously giving out that confident, that kind of confident vibe and attitude in that presentation or in that interview.
And that's definitely good insight. And I would also, just from some that have gone right and some that have gone wrong, I think it's when I got out of the service, someone said you need to look at finding a job like a job. So, so that due diligence of, sometimes I'll call somebody and they're like, oh, what was this? What position is this again for? That's the wrong answer. That tells me you've applied to too many positions and you don't even know what position that I'm considering you for. So, when you're applying to jobs, some of them have passwords, websites. I would say make sure you have a notepad or a file for each company that you're trying to get a job at, and maybe even print or have those links available that you can go to real quick to know that this is the job that I actually applied to, so that when you are talking to somebody, especially the recruiter, that you can say, yes, I have the requirements. I have the secret clearance, or I have the years of experience. I have the degree requirements. I have the skills required, and that you can talk to that job and knowing that you could do that job, and that you're kind of saying, I've done it, I did it, and can do it for you as well, or could grow sometimes into those positions. I would also say sometimes as recruiters, especially folks that I'm just giving you an example here. Sometimes you come out of the military, you might have 8, you might have 12 years experience, or even 20. And the position you apply to might be a bachelor's in 5, right? Or something lower level. And sometimes people look at that and they're like, oh, that person's not going to be interested, or that person's not going to stick around because they're just going to come in that position and then jump out of there. So if you see that, there are sometimes people in their transition, they're like, you know what, I don't want to supervise anybody anymore. I just want to be an individual contributor. And so this role works out perfect. I want more work-life balance. So sometimes, I don't call it stereotypes, but sometimes we look at somebody and I'm like, is this person going to be a fit? Or they're in California, the position supporting people in LA or something like that. So then it's like, well, how is this working? And why would I call you to begin with? So sometimes you got to make sure you connect the dots. Like, you know what, I'm planning on moving to Virginia, or I'm only interested in remote. So that way you do get the phone call to have the interview, right? So it's those little things, so that when you have 200, 400 applications, that recruiters are going through, trying to figure out which ones I'm going to call, make sure yours stands out to make sure it hits all those marks and the requirements of that position.
I think Rich and JJ definitely made some really key points. And I would almost say Rich stole a little of my thunder about printing out the job postings, because, when the job comes down, you can't access it anymore. And so when you get a call saying, hey, we want to meet with you, or we want you to interview with the leadership or interview with the recruiter, being able to pull that job posting and description so that you can use that to start preparing and you're already ahead of the game. And so, I think JJ made the good point that we've already talked about numerous times, is just the preparation you take to practice speaking out loud, practice, interviewing with individuals that maybe do not have a veteran background, to try to avoid that military jargon. I think those are common themes that we've already seen through these first two questions. I think a couple of things that I would just add when you talk about the different types of interviews, I would first of all think about, when you're talking about this virtual environment that we're in, we're using Zoom or MS Teams, and you're always, make sure you're testing your computer equipment before the interview. Even though maybe you're like, oh, I've used Zoom plenty of times, I'm not going to have any problems. Always just do that quick test just to make sure that there isn't an issue with like the link that they've sent you, or maybe there's a downtime with MS Teams, which has happened occasionally over the last 18 months. And then the other thing I would mention is just ensuring that you are in a quiet space to take the interview. I have definitely encountered individuals for a phone interview calling at our scheduled time and just want to make sure this is a time that still can connect. Oh yeah, I'm just doing gardening, or I'm just running errands. We want to make sure that like you're in a dedicated space, quiet, that you can really focus and prepare and really bring your best self forward for that interview. Would probably be just initial tips that I would just kind of add to the conversation.
I'd like to add too to that, because we are remote at Instant Teams 100%. So all of our interviews are actually done through Zoom or through this thing we call a one-way interview. I'm sure it's called a few different things in different recruitment teams, but a one-way interview. So what will happen is we will ask questions. You will have maybe 1 minute, 30 seconds to prepare your answer, and you will be recorded. So you'll pretty much be talking to the camera, and what you should be practicing is how you look in the camera. Some people are off, doing this and talking, and in a normal environment, you probably wouldn't do that. You would be speaking to the camera, look at the lens. A big trick that we have told people is even to maybe put some sticky notes around your camera to prevent yourself from looking, all over the place. So that is something you could practice. Practice recording yourself. Zoom has the capability of you recording. So practice doing that, record yourself, watch it back. And that's always something that has been helpful. Also, of course, make sure to professionally dress, at least from the top up, right? If you're doing a virtual interview, because even that, sometimes I've seen some people come in crop tops, and I don't know if they just weren't prepared for being seen on the camera, but that is something that people need to be aware of before going into an interview. They might think that it's just voice, or you could stay, behind the camera, but that's not what us as recruiters are looking for. We need to see your face. You need to be able to interact with us. Just because we're in a remote environment doesn't mean that it's all just talking, and you have to be able to still communicate face to face, especially if in the future you'll be dealing with customers. You're going to want to have to pretend like it's a real conversation in real life. So a lot of note taking before even has helped. Volunteering activities I've also found, where, specializing in trying to recruit veterans, but also military spouses. That's a huge audience for us. So a lot of them don't have much experience in that particular position that they're applying for, at least they don't think so. But then it comes to them, oh, they've coordinated all of these military events. They've done all of these things for, their husbands and their units, or, their different departments, lots of volunteer work. My personal volunteer work probably has surpassed some of even my professional skills. So always remember to use volunteering activities as part of your interview as well.
Awesome. I'm going to move on to, go right
Martin,
ahead.
I just wanted to kind of answer Bill's question about the scenario about the gardening. The question, the statement that I made about that, Bill, was more around when I have a scheduled time with a candidate versus I'm calling a candidate kind of out of the blue and saying, hey, can you talk? I think if a recruiter is calling you out of the blue saying, hey, I want to talk with you, is this a good time to talk? And it's not, you should be honest with that and say, is there a better time for us to connect? I'm running errands, or I'm gardening, or whatever it may be. And I think that is completely fine. I think when it's a scheduled time, though, you want to make sure you're in that kind of dedicated space and the right mindset to really, like you said, ensure that you're not distracted and the recruiter won't be distracted.
Awesome. Yeah, he's actually making a lot of great questions. So I had saved that one to the side too. Cool. So we'll move on. Do you know if there are any common questions on your company interviewing that your managers or that your recruiters ask the most when interviewing, and what kind of response are they looking for?
I feel like this is such a,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I know a couple of times, a couple of standard ones are, tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of that icebreaker. But normally, like on a initial call, they might ask the question, and it still might be asked in the interview, is what has you in the market looking for new opportunities? Because people want to know what's going on, that either one had you apply to that role, or why do you want to be a part of the company? Are you running from something? And obviously a lot of times in a military transition, that's an easy answer, right? Hey, I'm separating the service on whatever date. And so a lot of times that can be an easier answer for military, but I've had some people will say for career progression or growth, or I would just want to dip my toe in the pool of possibilities. Just want, it's a hot market out there, and a lot of people are just wanting to see what's going on, that they want to see what their market value is, and they want to strike while the iron's hot. And maybe they're just passively looking. And so that also lets the hiring manager know, from depending on how you answer it, is this person all in? Are they sold on our company? Do they want to be a part of our company? Are they just using us? They're going to be gone in 6 months or 12 months because based on their goals don't line up to where this position is going to be. So I would say those would probably be two of the main questions. And the one about tell us about yourself is kind of a loaded question because that can go all different places. There are certain legal things that a hiring manager cannot ask you, like how many children you have, are you married, how much money you're making. Sometimes in certain states, they don't allow you to ask that. So sometimes once you start disclosing information, then it opens up the conversation. But I would stay on point to stay on, here's where I am in my career, and this is what led me here to you today, and look forward to the next steps. But I would keep that probably around 5 minutes. But that's usually a softball question. It's your elevator pitch. But I would stay away from, depending on the company. And I say that because sometimes there's smaller companies that they want to know everything. But I'd be careful to say, yeah, I've been married for 20 years. I have 4 kids and they're all running around me right now. And you can't see them because you don't want to show that hand. You just stay on point with you're there to talk about a job, not your family or that you just became a grandpa or whatever is going on in your world.
With Grainger, as I mentioned earlier, we focus a lot on those behavioral questions when we really dive into the individual, the candidate's experience. So for instance, if you're a people leader, we're really wanting candidates to tell us, how they've coached a team member or how they've developed a team member related to performance or quality of work. And sometimes it's something really just as explicit as, tell me a time when you had to coach a team member due to performance and quality, and what steps or actions did you take to coach that team member? So as a leader, coaching is not corrective action. It's always more than just telling a team member that you're not meeting performance and you need to do better. So, when you're thinking about that STAR response, it's really, well, if I needed to coach this person, what did I do as a leader to coach? What tactics, actions, steps, tools did I use to coach this individual to change their behaviors, whether it be through observations or showing tips and tricks or additional training, whatever it may be. Grainger at one of our core culture is really just the ability to embrace curiosity. So we're always asking candidates around, telling us a time when they maybe thought of a better way to do something. And, why was this way better? And what was the impact of that new way of thinking? And really, it's all focused around, can you ask questions and can you never stop learning? To really better improve operations, find cost savings, or really just change how we do work as a team that's for the better. And so, those are the two things that I would think stands out just in general for us at Grainger, of really that people leadership and that's just that curiosity of common questions that we typically will ask candidates throughout the process.
Yeah, so Stryker is, I'll just kind of go through like at each stage of the interview process, the questions that you might hear. So generally the first phone call is going to be the recruiter for the role. Okay. And it sometimes could be a 15-minute call, sometimes, up to 30 minutes. And they're generally screening for whether, number one, you're going to be a good culture fit at Stryker. And they're going to also be screening for some role specific questions. So depending on what the hiring manager, wants them to ask. Now, the next step is usually the hiring manager. So once you get through the recruiter, they'll set you up with the hiring manager. Now, the hiring manager is going to be more specific to the role and that specific team, right? So they're going to be asking you questions about that specific role, that the technical aspects of the role, if it is a technical role, the experiences that they're looking for to have on the team, and then as well as, are you going to get along and work well with the current team that is in place? Okay, so they're going to be asking you a lot of some of those questions. And then the next step is what we call a talent assessment. So we partner with the Gallup organization, so the same organization that does all like the polling and things like that. So we partner with the Gallup organization to run our candidates through a talent assessment. And this talent assessment is mainly behavioral based questions to figure out how you work and the ways that you prefer to work. And Stryker isn't the only company that does this. A lot of companies do this. Some of them put it in the front. So as soon as you apply, they'll send you an online assessment and you have to complete that. Or like for us, we do it, on the back end because we actually want our recruiters and hiring managers to have that engagement with our candidates. The most common feedback that I have gotten from military candidates, and this is at all stages of the interview process, is that they say a lot of we, they say a lot of team, they say a lot of us, but I don't know what they did. I don't know if they're able to do that on their own, because they're always like, my team did this, we did this. So I don't know if they actually have the capability to be innovative, right? To be a leader. So that's one thing I think specifically for people coming out of the military need to be aware of is, yes, we all love to talk about our teams, but during an interview, they really want to hear about your personal achievements, what you did as a part of that team success, right? So still loop in the team, but you do also have to talk about your specific actions that led to that team achievement. Because remember, they're hiring you, right? They're looking to hire you. They're not looking to hire your team. So I think as far as the type of answers, right, that we're looking for. And then the last stage after you go through the talent assessment would be that final interview where you meet with a group of Stryker people individually, right? So sometimes it's on site depending on if the role is on site or not. Right now, mostly it is all virtual. Depending on the role, you might have some other things in there. You might have a presentation like for marketing and sales. They want to make sure that you're comfortable standing up in front of other people and presenting to a group of people that you don't know, because that is what our marketing and sales teams do, right? We sell to hospitals and surgery centers and things like that. And then sometimes there could be a ride along as well for some of our field-based roles.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm going to echo what everybody else has said. The only thing I'd really focus on is knowing what, be prepared to explain what it is you want to do, and make sure it's relevant to the job that you're interviewing for as best you can.
Thank you, Drew. Thank you. So we're at the 15-minute mark where we want to open to the floor for questions. I know Christopher has his hand raised, so we'll try to get him unmuted. And we've got some other great questions that came in the chat box. So see if we can unmute Christopher here.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
We can, Christopher.
Okay. Yeah, so pretty much I was looking at job interview questions online, and I saw a couple of good ones too. And I felt like one of the interview questions that I ran into is very important to me for a company that I'm applying for. But at the same time asking it, I feel like it's also, it feels a little bit controversial, because I feel like it may set a red flag to a recruiter. So I just wanted to ask to see what's the opinion on this question. So pretty much, this company that I'm applying for, it has, they pay very well, but you're handling hazardous material. That's what it says in the job description. So my question to them for the interview in 2 days is like the turnover rate. So like I want to ask them like, how high is the turnover rate, and just how long, pretty much just asking how long people stay within the company, because the reason why I'm asking that is because I don't want to go in and then I notice that it's just a dangerous kind of job, or it's just it can be detrimental to my health, and then I find that it's not, this job isn't for me. So just having that basis gives me an understanding of how often people quit the job, kind of how dangerous it can get in a sense.
I think that's honest and a great question, and not just for that job, for any of the jobs out there, because that shows your interest in that company, because it shows that you want to stay with, you don't want to make a decision and only be there 6 months and be trying to find another job. You're committing and you're saying, hey, we usually say, what is the retention rate there? Or how long, what's the average? And you could even ask them, how long have you been with the company? And on average, how long do people stay with the company? And if it's a government contract, you can even say, how long is this contract length for? But that's to me, that's a great question, and it's a proactive question. And I don't think it would be one of those that would be a red flag at all. To me, it would say that you want to join our company and you want to stay with us longer than 6 months or a year.
Yeah, Christopher, I agree with Rich. I don't have any really concerns with that question. The only thing I would caution you on is be aware that people leave for many different reasons. So it's not always going to be that people are leaving because maybe the environment is handling hazardous material, right? just some questions that kind of came out of my head is I would want to know, well, what does the training program look like to handle these type of hazardous materials? What is the PPEs that's supplied to handle them? What are the safeguards? What is your maybe OSHA accident ratings? Things like that. I think to get under really, like you mentioned, is this position, given the high risk, a fit for you of what you would want to do in your career going forward? But I would just, like I said, I think Rich is right. I mean, I think it's a great question. I think most people should ask that type of attrition or turnover, especially in operation roles. I think that gives you an idea of the culture of the organization as well.
And if I can go back and add, yeah, Glassdoor is one of those places. It's kind of like a Yelp for business, right? It has current and past employees. So you can look at the reviews online to know maybe what the issues are or were, and then you could even bring those up. Hey, and again, it shows that proactive, hey, I noticed on your Glassdoor, you have a 4.2. And some of the concerns, I noticed this was an issue. Has that been resolved? If you see an issue that you wanted, or one of the things I liked is it was this positive thing that I noticed. Is that still happening with your company? So it can all, to me, it just leads into that good discussion where it's not just a random thoughtless question, that there's a reason why you're asking it.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, remember earlier I talked about reaching out on LinkedIn and networking with people, at that company. You can also network with people who have quit that company, right? I think that's also very important to figure out why they quit. Is it because of culture? Is it because of safety? Is it because of pay? Whatever the reason is. So that's also one way that you can find out why people quit the company, is to again, just kind of go on LinkedIn, and then finding people who have worked for that company in the past.
Awesome. Thank you. Solid questions that are coming up, solid answers. Gonna go back a few questions on the chat box from a resume standpoint. Do you think anyone really cares about military decorations or achievements like medals or quarterly annual awards, just from y'all's perspective?
So short answer is no. But so the thing that we say is you should be putting forth a 1 to 2 page max resume, right? 1 page preferred, 2 pages max. If you have room to put it on there at the very bottom, if you don't have anything else to fill your resume with, then yes, I would say you can put it on there, but only put the ones that are like actually an achievement award, right? So for example, I would say from the Army, because that's where I'm from, right? When you get an Army Achievement Medal, that's like not like your PCS awards, right? That I'll say that, right? Your PCS awards are not really like an achievement award because everybody gets it. So if everybody gets one, that don't list it, okay? Like a good conduct medal, for example, right? I would not list that. However, if you get things like, I don't know, Bronze Star with Valor, or other things that are actually like above and beyond achievement, then yes, I would put that on there. For the people who know what that means, yes, it will be value add to your resume. Same thing with schools, right? Like basic training, everybody goes through basic training, so don't put that. But like Ranger School, Sapper, whatever other like special forces, right? Like all of those, where it's a selection process for you to get into the school, and then it's also very hard for you to complete the school. Those I would put on there, right? So again, people who know what that means, yes, though that will be value add to your resume. And then don't be afraid, like if you were ranked, right? Best NCO, #1 officer out of all battalion XOs, or, whatever, put that on your resume. Don't be afraid to put your achievements down there. But yes, I think if it's something that everybody gets one, I would not put that.
I agree. I think that we have So for like, if you're applying for a recruiter position and you have a medal or some type of achievement that says that you've reached goal or you've made 150% goal, something like that. I know because my husband has had, medals like that I told him this would be good for future resumes. And I know that Martin, you work with resumes, I'm sure, and I've seen layouts of resumes. So, I mean, go to Hire Heroes and see, what would you recommend? I'm sure they have some input. I believe you put them like near the end to kind of summarize. So that would be a good point if you end up having to talk at the end about your medals, and just make sure it relates to the job and that there was an actual reward pertaining to the position that you're applying for. And you should always be changing your resumes according to what positions you're applying for anyways. So take out, things that aren't necessary, have, a blank that you have all of your awards, and just take out as you apply.
No, that's awesome. That's great feedback right there. Moving on, just because there's some great questions. Now, here's a really good one. How do you sell yourself and your experience without inadvertently being judged based on your age or being subjected to any type of ageism? Well, I think you want to really speak about what you've accomplished. I mean, everybody, all recruiters, all organizations are looking for someone that can help them execute your mission. And so, yeah, I think if you could go through and people shouldn't be discriminating on age regardless, but if you just go and you talk about your year's experience, that's one thing. But if you can really explain what you've accomplished and where we accomplished it, and provide some context for that employer, I think that's really the best way to to interview is really getting down to what was different because you were there.
Yeah, and I would also say that, being current with certifications, sometimes if someone was in, I'll just use systems engineering 10 years ago, a lot of things have changed. We have model-based systems engineering, we have digital engineering. And so are you keeping up with the technology advancements? And that, to me, it doesn't matter. And again, at your point, age, they can't discriminate for age. It really comes to, are you able to do the job? Are you qualified? Do you have the skill sets, and are they current? And that's how I would maybe battle that. I think sometimes when I hire folks, sometimes they have 20, 30 years. And I say, well, this is going to be more of this type of role, and they were used to doing, more of the overseeing of it, but can they actually do the job, right? Can they actually roll up their sleeves and do the work that's required versus at that high level? So that's, to me, again, tailoring your answers to the questions of that requisition or the job posting to show that you can actually do the work with the training and education experience that you have.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Rich. So it is about applying to the right job, right? So a lot of people apply to jobs and then they're like, oh, I didn't get picked because, again, they don't know this, right? But it's their assumption. They're like, oh, it's probably because I'm too old. Well, not really, because if they're looking for somebody with 3 years of experience and you've got 20 years of experience and you apply to a role, like they're not going to select you because you're quote unquote overqualified. And I know that word is like, it's not a good word, right? The overqualified, but you are overqualified. And part of what we are looking for as an employer is not just can you do the job, but another thing is, are you going to be engaged in this job? Are you going to be challenged in this job?
Right.
Right. We don't want you to be bored in the job, because guess what happens when people are bored? They quit. Okay. Right. And turnover is very expensive for companies. Okay. I think it's like 2 or 3 times the salary of one person to replace them. So that's a huge reason why we make sure that we're choosing the right people to put in those roles, because turnover is very, very costly. So, and then also, like Rich said, like, for example, if you've been a supervisor for 20 years and all of a sudden you apply to a director role, right? That's not going to be, that jump is a little bit too big, right? Even though you have 20 or 30 years of experience, and maybe in the job description it says you only need 20 years of experience, but it's matching experience, it's translatable experience, and not just the number of years, right? So that's something that you guys have to look at as well.
I'd like to add to that actually, because you could have a very seasoned person in the position, but for instance, if they're changing their situation, if they're trying to go into a remote role and they don't have the tech savvy experience, it's not going to be a good fit for you. Because I did see somebody just, be not considered for a position because they weren't tech savvy. They were very seasoned in the role. However, they didn't know really how to communicate through virtual means. So that's a big thing. Some people may think it's because I'm too old. No, it's because it's just a virtual world, and you just have to, if that's what you're trying to get into, you have to know your equipment, you have to know the computer and how to navigate it, because that's going to be a huge issue along the line if you're trying to go remote as a seasoned person who's never done anything like that before.
Well, thank you, everybody. Jackie, Drew, Rich, Leslie, Erica, and Martin. It looks like we're just out of time. I just want to remind everybody, you will get the recorded link of this session along with the follow-up survey. And also just remind you, our upcoming VetNet webinars are also with Walmart, and we have one with travelers and cybersecurity. So I just posted those links in chat box, so please join us for those as well. And that being said, thank you all so much for a great session, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.